Hey folks, this is Gary Creeley with Creeley Blades. Today we're going to take a look at the Folklore Beast edition. This is a derivative of my Folklore model, which is my standard bushcraft. It's inspired by the Woodlore knife by Alan Wood, and this version was specifically designed around taking on the JoeX destruction testing. So I got in contact with JoeX's channel, and I sent him one of these blades, and I made some changes to it compared to the normal Folklore. So firstly, rather than using Magna Cut, which is what I've been using for it, I used 8670. 8670 is a basic carbon steel, kind of a nickel alloyed carbon steel, extremely tough. There were folks saying, well, why wouldn't you do Magna Cut? Because if you made Magna Cut that thick, it would have been stronger. No, it would not. 8670 is at the top of the toughness scale. Magna Cut is a very high toughness stainless, no doubt about it. But, you know, maybe a 6 out of 10, whereas 8670 is a 10 out of 10. I used 1/4 inch stock. I ground a convex, kind of what I would call a Scandivex edge on it. And I heat treated it looking at Laren Thomas's chart on 8670 at about 58 Rockwell, because that is where it seemed to have the highest level of toughness for this particular steel. So now this steel is very tough. It is not very high edge holding. It is not especially it's not corrosion resistance hardly at all. Maybe a little more than like a 1095 or a 52-100, but not a lot of corrosion resistance. So here he's chopping a tree. Now I'd also like to say many of the things he does here would void the warranty. I know there are companies out there that encourage you to abuse your knives and they'll replace it. I am not one of them. If you abuse the knife, that takes it out of warranty. However, chopping a tree like this is not anything that would take it out of warranty. This is something it should be able to easily handle. So he chops this tree down and succeeds, and then we move on to the next test in the line. Okay, here we have the next test. This is the car stab test. I believe this is a 4th generation Volkswagen Golf. I don't recommend doing this to your knife. I don't recommend doing this to your car. But he stabs this. Now, he doesn't stab it once. He doesn't stab it 3 times. He doesn't stab it 10 times. He literally stabs this thing usually 100+ times into a car. So many knives could, hold up to 1 or 2 or 3 stabs, but this stabs a lot of times. It doesn't pierce quite as well as some pointier knives. That's a bit of a compromise for having a strong blade like this. So he goes and he goes and he goes and he goes, and it survives this just fine, as you can see there. Next, he moves on to the edge, like slamming the edge into like the side of the car door. We'll take a look at that. Okay, we can see here that the knife survived the tip test into the steel of the car. Now we're going for the edge here, and just pounding and pounding on the edge, blunt force on the edge. I would say probably over 100 times. And he goes now there's a plane up there. He checks out now. He gives it the 1-finger salute. Hello, plane. I guess this is how we greet planes in Austria. And continues on, slamming the edge into the side of that car door, a lot. And doesn't hurt the edge too much. Not much to see there. And continues on. And needless to say, this ends up with the blade being just fine. And then he actually goes into that little thicker steel there with the tip as well. I think he ends up breaking through eventually. So now we move on to the tip test, quote-unquote tip test. We'll talk about that a little bit. But he does jump into the water multiple times. I haven't figured out the exact reason for that. I think it's corrosion resistance. But he likes to get in there along with the knife. And so we'll take a quick look at that. Okay, this is our sort of corrosion resistance testing of sorts. Let me just kind of jump in. I gotta be honest, that water looks a little murky. But, this is 8670. It'll take on a little rust. However, it's a little less rust resistant than like a 1095. For instance, if you made a Damascus with this and a 1095, this would be the shinier of the steels. It would resist corrosion just a little more, but it's not really stainless or corrosion resistant. Now we move on to the tip test. So now he's stabbing it in there. This is child's play. No problem for this blade. In fairness, there's some blades he tested just one time in there, tink, and the tip's gone. That's not going to be the case here. Now we're up in the ante. Now some knives, when he hammers it in like that, the knife breaks then. That's not especially easy on a knife. I always worry he's going to cut himself one of these times. Like the blade breaks right at the front of the scales, and he lands on the sharp, broken, like right there. Ouch! Oh, ooh! Don't do it! Don't do it! So anyway, this would void your warranty, by the way, if it did happen to break. Yeah, this would be considered. We've moved into the abuse portion of today's video, and so. He tries multiple times. Partly the thickness and the convexness of the edge, it kind of sort of flips its way out, even when you drive it in pretty hard. And it's, the thickness, it's not a super long knife, and so the thickness versus the length of it, you're not going to get the leverage to break that. Now, if that was a 3-foot long blade, yeah, you might be able to do that. But in this blade, with the size that it is, you can do that all day long. And so it pretty readily passes this particular test. Now we move on. This is the stone test. Now this would also be sort of a warranty voiding activity. I was hoping that maybe this blade could cut that rock in half. With the convex edge, if he could develop a little bit of a V in the stone and slam that wedge into that V enough times, that I think that it could have potentially split the stone. Now, this is going to dull the edge. I mean, this is going to do some damage to the edge, even on 8670. Now the handles are coming loose here. Now all he would have had done is have a 3/32 Allen driver and just tighten them back up. They would be fine. I was considering putting Loctite on this when I send it to him, but I don't do that for the other blades, so I didn't think it'd be fair to do it for this, because I want them to be removable scales, and you put Loctite on them, it makes that sort of a hassle. So, but all you would have had done, and what essentially happens is, the vibrations, it's just going to jiggle those screws out, and they're going to fall off. They could be put back on at any time. Although, he does end up shooting the scales with the gun, which makes them less easy to put back on. But anyway, the scales fall off at this point. No biggie. Yeah. If you were if you were using the knife, you could pretty easily replace them. There, they finally fall off, and then he begins to. I don't know if he pounds it anymore. But the next test that he does. Oh, now this is also pretty tough on a knife, especially if it's developed big breakouts. Almost got him again. This knife almost got him so many times. It seemed to especially be going after his crotch. I don't know why, but that's what it did. If you develop those cracks on the edge, they become stress risers, and then when you hit the spine like that, often that will create a break. So he hit it quite a few times on the stone. It did not break. It did take some edge damage, but not catastrophic edge damage, but noticeable edge damage. Would have been a, pretty brisk sharpening session to remove it. But anyway, let's move to the rod test, which is the one that often is the one that kills a lot of knives. So let's check that out. Before we get to that, take a look a little bit at the edge. It's really not bad. I mean, you can see the impressions of the stone in the spine of the blade. I mean, that's how hard and often it got whacked. Now we move to the rod test or the pole test. And he's banging on that pole. He did say either, I don't know if he said it in the video or in the comments, he normally does 10 minutes of whacking the pole with the blade. He did 15 on this. There was a survey, or a poll, if you will, that he put on his YouTube page about how many people thought that this blade would survive this particular portion of the test. And only 17% of people, something like that, said they thought it would survive. Now that just makes me sad. Come on, guys. Of course it's going to survive that. So anyway, it survived the pole beating test for 15 minutes. We won't belabor and I don't think he even actually put the whole 15 minutes on there. But yeah, it survived. It survived. He dropped it a few times. Doesn't have handles. Those vibrations are probably, they're not too bad because of the thickness of the blade stock, but they're a little more than it was with the handles. All right. All right. So it survives the pole test. Now there's the proverbial pull-up test. Seems like JoeX is in pretty decent shape. Now, his name is not Joe or X, but that's the name of the channel, and I don't know, that it's public. I don't want to dox anybody. So I'll just keep referring to him as JoeX. No problem. Pull-ups were easy. And that's most of the test. Another mandatory water jump. I make no bones about it. My blades are made in America. I'm out of American steel. As much as I can, everything's sourced from America. Occasionally I use some German steels and other things, steels from other countries. But for the most part, I try to have not just an assembled in America product, but, pretty much 100% American. The G10 is from Current Composites, which is manufactured in Connecticut. So everything is U.S. made. The last thing he does is start to shoot it with a gun, and he starts out with a shotgun. Actually, he shoots it with a shotgun at pretty short range, and that does destroy it. However, that is not an actual use case for a knife. Oh, he did the tip into the rod too because he missed that, I guess, during the first part of the rod test. And, there's some wear there. And let me say this about the blade. The blade's banged up at this point. But even a user, certainly, it would not take me long to get that back to new. And even an end user, I think, could do it without too much trouble. So let's see the ultimate destruction here of the shotgun. So here we move on to the shotgun test. I think this is like something along the lines of buckshot, and that does kaboom.
Shotgun evaporated at the full blade. You can see the blast.
I kind of wish he would have hit it with the 9mm first, because he did hit it later with the 9mm and it had no problem. I think it could even take a 5.56 round. The shotgun at close range did it, and that might have been in part because it probably got hit in a couple places, which made it even more of an impact. But nonetheless, I thought it was a cool experience. I thought it was fun being able to send this blade out to get. I don't know that I could have laid that kind of abuse on a blade that I made. So I appreciated seeing sort of the limits of what it could do. And it was also fun for me to say, okay, here's a test. I know what the test is. Let me design a blade that would do as well as I think it could in that test. And I was pleased with the outcome. I think it was a fun video for him. I think views-wise, it's doing pretty good, and it's just fun for me. I've sold a few. I have pre-orders on the website. If somebody wants to get one, they're fun. It's a fun little blade. It's not, if you're a serious bushcrafter, it's a heavy, being that thick. But yeah, it was a good experience. So thanks for tuning in. Feel free to subscribe to the channel as I put out content, not as often as I'd like, but certainly relatively occasionally. How's that? So again, have a great rest of your day, and thanks for watching.